Welcome. I'm joined today by my guest, Robin Graham of R3D, going to be talking to us all about stereoscopic spatial conversion and all things going on within that side of the industry that I know very little about. Should be an interesting topic talking about people starting to convert old media for new uses within VR and other applications to try to revive dead media. So, Robin, how are you doing today?
Doing great. It's excellent to meet you for the very first time.
Yes, definitely our
Matthew.
first time. Never have met before, never have hung out before.
Yeah, no, I'm doing good. Just cranking away on more AI experiments and R&D, which is pretty much drives my life lately. But yeah, it's a
Yeah, as
blast
long
for
as I've
sure.
known you, you've always been tinkering on some kind of new project or application. It seems like every few months there's a new tool and you're going, all right, how do I do something cooler than this tool? How do I integrate this tool into my workflow? And it seems like you have a lot of fun kind of getting to experiment and research around all those new developments and how to apply them to, making films cool.
Yeah, I mean, on these particular set of problems in this particular company, I've been doing. I from 9 to 11, 9 a.m. to 11 p.m., pretty much every day. I mean, not on Saturdays because I do have a family. I only work 6 hours maybe on Saturdays. But yeah, I mean, I'm just obsessed with this kind of stuff. You know, um, some very interesting things around that and around R&D now, especially in this. I mean, this world of great abundance with knowledge and being able to create new things. I mean, I'm kind of going off track, but I definitely want to get into that a little bit earlier. A lot of people kind of think like, oh, everything's cooked. There's no place for us. AI is doing everything, but um, I have a very different take on it.
Yeah,
But
you're finding a lot of new ways to experiment and say, okay, like, yes, AI is taking over on some of these applications, but it also opens up a lot of new things that I think most people aren't thinking about.
yeah, I mean, I can get into my rant now. It's not really a rant, but I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been heavy in AI since, and specifically in the movie industry since about 2018. This is when Disco Diffusion was out. Do you remember that?
No.
Okay, so Disco Diffusion, it was when ResNet was big. Anyway, it was like the beginnings of AI for, I mean, you know, machine learning's been around since the 70s, but this was the beginning of really seeing some interesting things being done with images and video and stuff like that. And um, there was this film we were working on at Crafty. Oh man, it was a period piece. I want to say it was called Little Women or something. I'm horrible at this stuff, but they had some shots that were just out of focus. Um, and so I built and trained a CNN, which is a type of neural network, to um, to focus the image. So so basically, I made a huge data set. I made like thousands of images I took 1,000 like sharp images and I defocused them to different values. And then I trained a neural network to take the defocused images and make them sharper. So it's kind of like a super resolution thing. Um, it wasn't really that amazing, but it did make it into the film at least, right? So, but I've been doing this for quite some time, and it's very obvious now how AI, machine learning has impacted the world. But a lot of people are saying, what are we as humans going to do? What are we as artists going to do, and stuff like that.
Hmm.
My kind of take on a lot of this stuff is, well, I'm looking at it from a business perspective, right? Where technology is essentially free now, or maybe it costs $200 a month, uh, but tech knowledge, it's essentially free now. So
Especially the access to it, where prior, if you wanted to learn a specialized skill, you really had to go to college and find a formal education for it. And now, like you're saying, it's, I mean, within weeks, people are getting fully Python scripting. I mean, the ability to learn and adapt new information, especially from a technology standpoint now, is so rapid.
yeah, and to be fair, you could have, like I never went to college or anything. You can teach yourself all this stuff, but it is certainly a lot harder. But what still exists in business, particularly, what still exists in this world of free knowledge, of free technical expertise, right? And I still think it's, maybe more than ever, it's the trust between people. Um,
Hmm.
Business, a lot of people, you see a lot of people talking about corporations as if they're a big entity. It's kind of like talking about the government as if like the government's doing this and this corporation's doing this, but it's really just a whole bunch of people. I mean, there's no there's no government or company that isn't just a bunch of people like the people, next door. Um, and they all rely on human interaction, human connection to
Yeah.
make decisions, to make business decisions, especially. Um, you could have all the best technical stuff in the world, but no one's going to want to work with you if they don't really trust you. So I think a lot of it, even in this new AI world, a lot of it just goes back to how you are working with people. You know,
Yeah, it speaks to the value of like interpersonal relationships. And I mean, that's very true in the film industry that everything is not what you know, but who you know. But I think that's doubly true across the board now with AI because if everyone can know the thing, then it becomes, well, who knows people and not just who knows them, but who has the ability to connect with humans on that level. Because as you're saying, it's like at a C level, especially if I'm making decisions, well, I want to work with the guy that I like working with. I'm never going to go with the guy who maybe has the faster answer just because it's faster. I want to go with the guy that's actually enjoyable to work on projects and accomplish things with.
that's maybe like every level, in my opinion. Um, I've always just kind of wanted to focus. I've always focused on just being a good, cool guy to work with and stuff. And again, what people value is what is rare. And when technical expertise is no longer rare, what are people going to value? Uh, I posit that it is again much more of like the human connection, um, what kind of trust you can build in a brand. Sometimes that brand is a particular person, but that's I think what kind of makes things happen.
Yeah, I find it very interesting that we're seeing a lot of kind of like larger tech companies that have sales positions and sales teams, so, especially like traditional SDR roles. They're starting to try to build AI agents that will facilitate the SDR role and trying to acquire new clients and sell them on the product. And like I can understand AI for baseline customer service, but for me, trying to remove the interpersonal part of a business transaction, it feels like we're kind of missing the whole point of what peer-to-peer sales is and like what me trying to build a client relationship with another human is. It is the client relationship. It is not that I can offer you the best sounding discount on a piece of paper or answer your it
Yeah.
feels really like we're missing the whole point with a lot of our adoptions of AI at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. Unless you're talking about commodities, unless you're talking about like you need to order some more um, you know,
Dog food,
monster. I'm
yeah.
just looking around at like monster energy drinks, right? You don't need a person in the loop for that. I have seen people use AI to weed out customers to build a qualified list
Hmm.
for real humans to talk to. But yeah, in general, like you shouldn't be outsourcing that kind of connection. Like that's really all you have, in my opinion. Um, but yeah, so that's in that's a big thing I'm focusing on now. I mean, obviously, I'm a very technical guy, and I spend all my day doing technical things. Um, but without that layer on top, and without some bit of marketing, and without some bit of networking, or at least knowing the people that can do that, I'm going to have the best product in the world that no one will ever find out about, and that I will lose all my money trying to bring to market. It's just the way it is.
It's a very fair point. So let's talk about what you're getting into on a day-to-day basis. What is stereoscopic conversion? For anyone who doesn't know, what exactly is that, and what is the whole point of R3D? What are you guys working on at the moment? I know there's obviously a lot of R&D and things to how can we explore this further and apply this tech that we're building out into other things, but where do we start?
Yeah, well, most of what we do is money laundering. I mean,
As it should be.
they won't,
Film
you know,
industry.
the other guys won't tell you that, but no. So stereoscopic conversion, or just stereo conversion, um, essentially, you go to the movies, and you watch something, and it's a 2D movie. You don't have to wear the glasses or anything. That's what we start with. So that's the movie by itself, 2D flat. Um, and then what we do is go shot by shot and use AI and artists as well, to define the depth for that particular shot. So essentially, you're creating depth maps. A depth map is the same size as the actual image, and it's just estimating how far away each thing in the image is away from the camera. So it's a black and white map. Things that are closer to camera, well, it depends on the depth map, but for what we do, things that are closer to the camera are brighter, and things that are farther away are darker. So you get a what looks like a radar image, 3D image of
So
the
it's the
scene.
idea that you have a still image from a scene that you're looking at, and we as humans can innately know that the person is standing very close to the camera, and the mountains way in the back must be very, very far away from a camera. But
Yeah,
when you have that
because
as
of
just a
stereo
similar,
vision. Yeah,
as a singular two-dimensional image, there isn't without the human understanding of that, it is just a two-dimensional plane where everything is relatively equidistant from each other. And so what depth mapping is taking that and saying, okay, well, we can know that the human is obviously much closer to the camera, and
yeah,
this guy is standing behind him, so he's a little further away, and then there's a building behind that, and then a mountain way, way back there, and
sure.
understanding in relation where they are.
Yeah, it's called monocular depth estimation, and it's been a research, um, a study of research for many, many years, and it's actually very complicated when you start to think about it. Now, in video, right, in moving imagery, there's some interesting, we can see 3D because we have two eyes, we have left and right. If you just have one eye, you innately know what's closer and farther away, but it's not the same. You're estimating the depth based on visual cues, right? If there are ways of extracting motion from video, so if the camera's moving around, you can extract the motion of different objects in the scene and use that to compute depth, right? So, because if you're moving a camera, there's a parallax thing where things closer to the camera move more than things farther away. There's a lot of interesting things you can do. The latest AI models are really quite good at depth estimation, like amazingly so. They're not perfect. So that's where our artists come in to, sometimes it gets weird where it might think that like this object back there is somehow at the depth of my chair or something instead of being way back there. That happens sometimes. There's a lot of things like that. So our artists go in and modify the step map to make sure it's perfect, right? So we go in, we have the image, we estimate a depth map, we use that to place virtual cameras. So let's say the film is shot just with, let's just say a virtual camera that's just static and it's just sitting there and it's just looking at the image. We'll create a second camera off to the side. So now you have two cameras looking at the scene from slightly different angles. And that's going to give you your left eye and your right eye. And it's essentially just, you know, it's it's estimating, or let me see, how do I say it? It's it's uh it's simulating what this scene would look like from two different eyes. And then there's a lot of work that goes into it after that. That's one part of it, is making the two eyes. And then after that, there's a whole bunch of things we have to do. Um, you know, consider this: if one camera is looking at me like this and the other camera is kind of looking at me from this angle, there are things in this second angle back here that this first camera doesn't see, right?
Additional
So
information.
there's a lot of work that goes into, and we also developed AI models to help with this as well. Um, there's a lot of information that needs to be filled in from the other camera. Um, you have semi-transparent things, and this is where things get very complicated. Is, let's say you have frosted glass, right?
Hmm.
The frosted glass needs to read at this depth, but what you see through it needs to read at this depth. So but yeah, essentially we go shot by shot using our AI models, using the artists, and we create a 3D version of the film. Go back and forth with directors on, you know, playing out it's called the depth grading for the show, like how the shots flow into each other, which shots have a lot of deep depth, which ones are more
Hmm.
shallow, which ones are like way in your face, which ones are farther back. um, we developed a real-time system to be able to do that in real time, just like in
Do
a
you find
video
that there's
editor.
an additional emotional weight added to scenes based on that? So like a scene that should, like do you have extra parallaxing effect on a scene where maybe like you're intense up on a character, that you want the emotional weight of the character to feel more distant from the world he's in? Like, do you ever find that makes sense to do with directors and things like that to add new emotion just based on adding depth to scenes?
That sounds like a horrible idea. No, yeah, we do a lot of that stuff, and that's where I think, where a tech only company, a bunch of like AI bros, develop some models or use off the shelf models to do what we're doing. That's where I think they start, you know, they start falling back in quality, is because they don't
Hmm.
understand those types of things. It's the same. Let's say you could have the same person shot in completely different ways for completely different scenes. If you want a level of uncomfortability, right, you go wide and you go close, and you feel, and the person's right up, and I'm just talking about 2D, person's right in the frame, and you feel claustrophobic and you see them sweating and their features are distorted, right? That's kind of like a high tense moment. Or you shoot them on a long lens and you move back so that
Hmm.
it's not as tense and in your face. It's the same thing with 3D. Um, it hurts your eyes to go. So okay, so to explain a term, so in stereo film, if something is, let's say the theater screen is right here. If something is coming towards you out of the screen, it's called positive. If it's falling away behind the screen, it's called negative. To me, oh wait, sorry. See, I even got it wrong. This is, I hate the way they do this because it doesn't make any sense to me. If it's coming towards you, it's negative, and if it's going away
Okay.
from you, it's positive. Which I just think that's completely wrong. But yeah, if you had a movie that was negative all the time and there was always stuff, Captain EO, the hands like in your face the whole time. If you did that, it would be super uncomfortable. It would hurt your eyes from shot to shot. It's like watching something like this.
Because it's
So
like you're holding a book up close to your face. Essentially, your eyes are trying to adjust to a fixed focal point that's far too close.
yeah, exactly. It's not good. So but those types of moments, like in Captain EO, are very effective, right? So you want to pick and choose where you do that. So a lot of times,
Hmm.
like dialogue shots, back and forth dialogue, you don't need a ton of depth there. Especially because I don't know if I'm getting too in the weeds with how this stuff works, but in a two shot, right, you have me talking and then you have the back of someone's head right there talking to me. You know, if you have my face like, negative towards the audience, and then all of a sudden you switch sides and the other person's talking and their face is over here and my face is over there,
Your
what
eyes have to then.
what you just did is you went from something right here in your face, and then jumps to right here in your face, and then it jumps back to, and it's really fatiguing. So generally, dialogue and stuff, you play kind of shallow, and then you have the big hero shots where, the Avengers, do a flip and land in that hero pose and, Spider-Man or something. You want that face kind of coming out towards you. You want, an explosion. You want something cool, something flying towards camera. You want it to like feel like it hits you in the face for a second. But you gotta just pick and choose those. And then there's very real like considerations, like the scale of the world you're looking at. Um, if if I showed like an aerial establishing shot of like a valley and hills and stuff, if I made that like really deep in depth, it would look like a miniature because our eyes are only so far apart, which
Yeah.
means things that are big, landscapes generally don't have a ton of depth, because you're looking at features that are very far away where each eye is seeing very minute, small differences. So if you give a whole bunch of depth to a scene like that, your brain thinks it's miniature because the only way you could see that scene with that much depth is if it was a miniature. So yeah, there's a lot of considerations, and that's part of the process is having stereo supervisors. They know what they're doing. They know how to craft a scene together. And also if a shot is particularly hard, we could probably convince a director that it should be shallow, and it would save us a lot of money. So there's that as well, which we never do. Um,
Never would
yeah,
do that.
no, but yeah, it's a whole there's a whole art to it. Once you get really once you really get into noticing and evaluating depth, it's kind of cool what you can do with it. And typically people don't even realize, like bad color, someone could kind of see that color's really bad. Bad audio, people know, but bad stereo, people just know it's uncomfortable.
There's a part of like the user experience that feels uncanny or just not quite right, but they don't understand what it is that they're visually seeing that's wrong.
Or painful or
Yeah.
confusing if there's objects in the foreground that should be in the background or vice versa.
I remember, do you remember when the 3D TV started coming out, like Samsung and a couple companies, and you could use their glasses to suddenly any television show or anything was suddenly in 3D. And it's exactly what you're describing, where it's like because none of those things were actually converted. And it wasn't like there was an algorithm running on it to try to
Right.
depth map on the fly or anything. It was just kind of some things would be in your face and some things wouldn't. And there were so many things that I remember, like when it first came out, me and all my friends, like, one of our friends' parents got one and we're like, cool, we got to watch the newest movie in 3D. We got to come over and watch it. And it's like, you would watch the movie and be like, my eyes hurt. And there were a lot of scenes that for whatever reason, I don't know what was going on during them because my brain had trouble placing objects in the scene and having the contextual understanding of like, we're so used to observing something from a perspective that we know, you know, but when those, like you're saying, it would have things happen where it's like the mountain would be as three-dimensional as the guy talking in front of the mountain. And my brain's like, he's in the mountain. I
Yeah.
can't quite wear these things in relative three-dimensional space. So how have you seen like 3D change over the years? Because it seems like now there is a intentionality brought into maybe the process of turning it into 3D. Early on we had red blue split. You go to the theater and just put on the glasses and everything's kind of, and then we saw where like filmmakers would start adding in like pop out things, like you'd be watching Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in 3D and something would fly out at you that was a little more immersive. And then shitty TVs where everything was 3D. And now we're seeing I guess 3D has seemed kind of dead in the United States for a while until the resurgence of VR.
Hmm.
But 3D has also not really been as dead in, overseas, like in the Chinese market. So
Yeah, a lot of people talk about the Chinese market, the, you know, Asian Pacific market in general, is very big for 3D. Even South America and stuff are really into 3D content as well. Um, Maybe I'll go into later as far as like why that dip kind of happened. But to go into kind of where we were and where we are, what you're talking about with the old 3D TVs and stuff back in like 2006, 2008, like during the big boom, is really interesting. Um, in contrast to that, as you're talking, I'm looking over and I have a couple 3D monitors, um, new modern 3D monitors. they stopped making them like in 2012 for the most part, but um, Lenovo, uh, Acer, and LG all have brand new modern 3D monitors now, and
Hmm.
that are glasses free. You don't need glasses. They have eye trackers, and they send a different image to each eye.
Wow.
They're really expensive right now. They're like 2 grand, but that's just because it's a new product, right? And they're kind of testing the market. Those will come down in price, but they include some interesting like real time depth analysis to 3D conversion in them. So it's like the really crappy version of what you saw, but much better. Obviously, it's running in real time. There's no competition to kind of the stuff I do, but I love it. I think it's amazing. One of my early experiences. Okay, I have to. How far back do I go? I'm not going to go that far back. My first 3D experiences were the Magic Eye, the Magic Eye things back in the 90s. Do you know what those were? Where it was like a repeating pattern, and if you like crossed your eyes or something, you
Yes.
could see it in
Yes.
3D. Oh, it's a sailboat, right? So, um, I was born in '79. I know I look 23. But in the 90s, when I was a teen, those came out and I was fascinated by them, and I trained myself to be able to do that with my eyes, to be able to go
You were an
parallel with my
expert at crossing your eyes
uh
or
parallel.
inverse. Yeah.
Yeah, going parallel with them. Yeah, I trained myself to do that um on command because I thought those were really cool, and I was like making my own little magic eye things. But it actually I think it caused a problem with my left eye because it's kind of lazy now. And
Okay.
I still have the ability, and actually I use it all the time to view stuff in 3D. But you can see like,
Oh yeah, that's weird.
yeah, I
I
just kind of
I,
trained
I
myself to do
cannot
that.
I
Wah!
cannot at all move my
Yeah.
eyes in those directions.
But that was for me the earliest experience. But then I remember one of the Super Bowls that had this 3D segment, and it was glasses, and I think one of them was red, and it worked, and the video had a lot of side scrolling, and it worked off the principle that red is somehow delayed, has like delayed processing in your brain.
Hmm.
So imagine something's moving across screen, and the left eye kind of sees an earlier version because it takes longer for it to process the red image. So essentially, one eye is seeing the image one frame ahead, and the other eye is seeing it one frame back. And because of parallax, it actually looks 3D. That was like the first experience with just like something cool on TV. But yeah, back in the day, they used to shoot 3D films with 3D cameras. It's usually two cameras. They're not usually side by side. Usually it's like top and bottom or side and bottom, and they go through lens splitters. And so they used to only shoot 3D movies with two cameras because they didn't have another way of doing it. They still do that, like you'll see Cameron do that, but generally, it's actually, in my opinion, it's not the best way to view 3D. Um, and it has a whole host of issues um, that you don't have with conversion. And it's because, what we see with real 3D cameras is not necessarily what we want to show as as a experience to a viewer. Um, for instance, again, your dialogue scene, and there's someone in the foreground, and there's a mountain way in the background. You shoot that with real cameras, and you're going to see that background is way back there. So
Hmm.
in order to make it not hurt your eyes, they compress the depth, and so the mountain's not so far back there. And they do that in the real world, they do that by getting the cameras closer together. Um, but now the people in the foreground are completely flat because, again, if you're compressing all that depth, you're compressing the internal depth of the person to be super flat. So it's in my opinion, it's not the best way to view 3D content. And so But that's kind of how things started, right? Avatar was big in pushing that, and there's
Yeah.
still, I think, sometimes this kind of like misled belief that shooting in 3D is like the only real way to view 3D. But if you imagine what we're doing, we can craft a scene however we want, right? We can give a lot of internal depth to the people in the background and make, sorry, the people in the foreground, make the background a lot flatter. We can intentionally move things around in the scene, forward or backwards, to like portray a certain feeling or
Well,
whatever we want. So
you had mentioned being able to even work with the director during the conversion process. And to me, that's a really interesting thing because while shooting with the cameras obviously allows the director to kind of see what he's doing on the fly, you can't do those kind of micro adjustments like you're talking about to add additional emotional depth or weight to the viewing experience based on, like we talked about, being any movie where suddenly the hero is going through some emotional turmoil, and like you do like a parallax shot where he gets distanced away, or it's like any of those things, being able to retroactively readjust the scene and how you would have had to have shot that scene three different ways with 3D cameras to go back and change that in the edit, where now you can go,
yeah,
cool, we're in the edit process, we can adjust this based on the rest of the contextual information. Because at the end of the day, like you said, it's like converting to 3D is about the experience of who's viewing it. It's like, yeah, it's cool, but if the emotional journey of the film is lost because it's now in 3D, or we change too much of the experiential part of it, that should only ever enhance the storytelling. This shouldn't take away from the storytelling.
yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. In my opinion, the way the shots play together and the amount of depth and the convergence, how close or far away from the screen it is, those things have the most amount of impact when viewing a 3D film. So we built our system around the idea of being able to edit that and work in that in real time. So let's say we get a film in, let's say it's 1,200 shots or something. um, we can process those 1,200 shots in, maybe a weekend or something. And then by Monday, what we have ready is imagine like a nonlinear editor, like, Premiere or Resolve or anything. And we have those boards, like what they do use in DI, or what colors to use to color a film. You typically see them in a theater and they have all these dials, and that's what we have, but it's for 3D. So come Monday, we have we have everything set up for all of the shots. I can just play, jog back and forth, adjust the sliders. I actually have, this is kind of funny. I'll show you this. This is a prototype, and actually, I still use it. Something I built to control the system, and it's a MIDI device.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
MIDI
and you
keyboard.
can see I kind of wrote over, like, I have another one that has little mini that has displays for each button, so it's not as ghetto as this. But yeah, all these sliders, they're all part of the system. It's about 14 different sliders, and then about 18 different actions. Um,
And now, are those adjusting, like you said, like
yeah,
depth on the fly?
yeah,
Since
yeah,
you
yeah,
have the full depth map, you can like
yeah, yeah.
literally just zoom him in, zoom him
Hmm.
out, move
Yeah,
him
yeah,
away from the scene.
yeah, yeah. So we can just play in real time. I can stop, adjust, any number of the dials. And this is, again, how close it is, how shallow the depth is, how much dilate we have on the masks, the gamma of the depth values, being able to push midground objects further or farther away. We could even select people, um, or objects from the scene and selectively move them closer or farther away from camera. So,
Wow.
and that's all in real time. And that was the most important thing to me. So basically what we do is we first sit down and grade the movie. We grade it, within, we could do it, I could do it in 2 hours, but you want to spend a little bit more time on it, maybe a day or two, um, maybe 3 days. I don't know. You get the cut looking really good, and then I can show that to a director. We can sit down with them and tune things on the fly. Typically, they just have some notes, and then once we get those notes in, now we know how the whole film is going to play out in 3D. and we can visually see any kind of artifacts that we need to fix. Um, about, I don't know, 85% of the shots don't really need much hand work at all. And then there's increasingly smaller percentages that need more and more work to get to the
Hmm.
quality we want to see. But yeah, we focus on what's most important first, which is how does it play? How does it feel? How do the producers and directors feel about the emotions it's conveying? Or maybe they don't care about that and they just want something that's very comfortable. All those things they can get buy off within a week or something. So imagine you're converting a film, which typical legacy companies at the least it costs about $4 million and takes 4 to 6 months, right? That's at the lower. Maybe you can get it done for 2.5 million, maybe, but it would be like really bad. It would be really, really bad. But that's what those legacy companies kind of do. Whereas we can, within a week, have a full version of the film ready for viewing, and then after that, it's just about cleaning up edges. There's a lot that goes into it after that, but it's essentially just all the details that you need in order to have a really high quality product on the screen or in your VR headset.
I think that's something interesting to talk about too now is the demand growth for the 3D market. Because historically,
That's right.
a lot of studios, there's no need for them to make a 3D movie. Because one, they're not going to release, especially in the United States, there was no need to release your movie normal and then release your movie in 3D. There's limited options externally. So the only people really seemingly doing it were saying, well, hey, we're a massive legacy company and we do want to go into a foreign market with this film. I'm sure you can talk about how people were using 3D releases to circumvent loopholes with how many theatrical releases from foreign markets could be done. But there just wasn't a lot of people consuming three dimension. And especially when you talk about it being so cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
But interesting because in the last 4 years probably we've seen a massive surge in VR, and especially last year with Apple's release for the Vision Pro, where now tons of people are consuming media in a brand new way, and especially older media in a brand new way.
Right.
So what are you seeing in 3D that is causing this trend, and where do you think studios need to be jumping on board? What are they missing out on that they're not maybe boots on the ground seeing?
Well, me, right? Guys, give me a call. Come on, I'm here all day. No, yeah. So it's interesting you brought up the creating converting a movie to 3D has traditionally been very expensive. Now, back in 2012 and stuff, there was enough hype over it that you could pay 6 million to convert a film to 3D, and you're going to make that back and even more by having that extra 3D SKU, having that extra 3D product, of your film. Um, but then 3D TVs died down, so that really cut down on the amount of viewers. Um, in my opinion, theaters are actually not a great place to see 3D. I mean, I know that's our main market, but I think anyone that's seen a movie in 3D, it's a lot dimmer. Sometimes it's just projectors aren't very good. It's not an optimal experience. Our theaters in the US, about 11% or 12% of them have 3D screens, whereas like
Hmm.
in China, it's like 98%. It's much, much higher. So one thing you touched on is that, yeah, you have to release a movie in 3D at the same time that 2D is released. Um, because like no one wants to see an old movie in the theaters. And that, yes, some people do use a 3D version in order to get themselves into the Chinese market or other overseas markets. A lot of these markets have caps on how much Western media they take in, which I totally understand, right? They want to keep their culture and they want to, push forward their own movie industries. There is a separate quota or bucket for 3D films. So if your film is 3D, you can go into this other bucket and they'll allow your film to come in to the country easier. So that's one reason why people do that. It is as far as like we are seeing much more of an uptick now, and we're getting a lot of interest from studios about first run theatrical films, right? This is like the first time the movie's shown in the theaters for the first time. But I think a lot of people, I think certain other forward-looking studios that shall not be named, a couple of them, are really want to push the for like the VR market because
Hmm.
those VR units are really selling now. A big part of it is because of Meta, and the Quest is very cheap. I don't even know if they make money off of them, and they're quite good. Like seriously, I think a lot of times it's like Xbox, it's a loss leader, and you sell the software, and that's how you make money, right? Xbox, they never made
Hmm.
money. Um, so I think it's something like that. But also these headsets are, in my opinion, the best way to view 3D content. I mean, it's the most pure. You're getting a bright, beautiful high-res screen to each eye individually. The glasses free 3D monitors are also really good. So we're starting to see a big uptake in the way that people can view 3D content. Um, and studios are seeing that, some of them, and are very excited about the possibility of creating more content for those devices. As more and more people start using these new 3D devices, I mean, you can't buy 3D TVs anymore, which to me is insane. Because they're all
They were
capable.
everywhere for a
They're
while.
all capable of doing it. Nothing went away. It's just a software checkbox. It's either on or off.
Oh,
So,
wow.
um, but besides that, I think people are seeing that when, as new people get introduced to this VR market and this headset and this glasses free 3D monitor market, they immediately look for something to view, right? They want to view something in 3D. They want to see what this thing can do. They want to get into it. Apple currently, I think, has the best. Apple TV is like the best market for 3D movies, but it's still very limited. So a lot of people are talking to us about doing back catalog work, which is,
Hmm.
your Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which I did for fun. I did a test on a couple sequences just because I love 3D stuff. It was a blast. It was crazy. The original Ghostbusters, seeing that stuff in 3D is actually really, really cool. So, um, and because, I haven't got into how much it would cost, but considerably cheaper than any competitor that is considerably cheaper than legacy. So like we really built out this super efficient pipeline. So it's something where people can talk to us about doing 20 catalog features, and now when people go to these with these VR headsets and new monitors, and when they go to these places, they're going to start having content, and content that they know, right? And content that people wouldn't mind spending a couple bucks for, renting it for 3D from Amazon for $4 or something. You get to experience Goonies in a whole new way. I've done like old black and white films. Like it's really very fun. So,
Hmm.
I want to see things go more in that direction. I think there's a lot of really cool TV shows, a lot of really cool action-based ones and stuff on Netflix that I think could really use this as an added-on product. I mean, there's so many different industries, right? And I think I would like to think we're coming into a new 3D boom uh, market, but it's going to be a little bit slower, I think, because people kind of are wary of it. Um, but seeing is believing, and the more people that get to view these VR headsets and view content in 3D, the more people are going to be sold on it because it's just the
Yeah.
coolest thing ever. It really is.
Like that was heavily true with VR adoption from a gaming standpoint, that for the first couple of years there really wasn't any, we'll call AAA studios or even AA studios producing games for VR. So
Just
everything
Alexa,
that
that was like the
initially,
first big one, wasn't it?
exactly, before they did that, everything before that was just kind of like, it felt very Dave and Buster's arcadey. It felt very gimmicky, where this is cool for a
Beat Saber.
10-minute session. It's novelty, but it isn't repeatable. It isn't, let me play for an extended period of time. And so you didn't have widespread adoption. You had a lot of early adopters, but most normal people that were even intensive gamers weren't going, cool, let me spend the money. But when Alexa came out, um, which is Half-Life. Valve produced massive AAA version, the first that you could. It was a full AAA gaming experience within VR, and after that, you saw a ton of other studios go, "Shit, we might be missing out. We might need to start adopting into this and moving to this." And then now, over the last 2-3 years, you've seen a significant growth and adoption in the gaming space of VR and a ton of new games coming out because they all started realizing, well, hang on, this is a massive potential market that there isn't enough quality content for consumers to enjoy. And so, as you spoke earlier, back catalogs, the whole economics of the film industry and entertainment industry is in shambles right now because everyone's going, well, we can't really spend money like millions of dollars manufacturing brand new productions. No one's buying new scripts. No one's developing IP. Everyone's trying to figure out a way to like keep things alive with what they have in existence. So it feels like you would definitely want to, especially if you are a larger studio sitting on a ton of back catalog, even like someone like Turner who has all these cool black and white films, or like the Criterion collection. It's like how many new people, and I'm speaking specifically like maybe 30 and younger or 20-year-olds that are into film, but they won't watch stuff beyond a certain time period. Like I find that all the time with normal people I talk to, like, oh, I love movies, but I've never seen anything before 87. Like, why does your film history stop in 1987? But I think by studios adopting new immersive experiences for people to enjoy and consume media, you open it up to a brand new audience that also doesn't cost you taking a gamble of, will this movie even people want to watch it? It's like, hey, we know people like this movie.
Yeah,
This movie has been proven to be a good movie.
you don't even have to go that far back. Last of Us season one from Netflix, right?
Yeah.
Um, I guarantee they'll make money off of re-releasing that in 3D with me, particularly. You're not gonna make money with other people; they're too expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, stuff like that. I'll share with you our sizzle reel. I'll share it with the audience. We haven't really shared it with anyone outside of studio execs, but it's totally fine. We can do that. And in there, we do some modern films, but we also have clips from a lot of older films. Original Star Wars, Terminator 2, first Back to the Future. We have some old black and white stuff in there. Jaws. Again, this
There's
is
a,
this is mixed in with newer stuff, but it is so cool.
I'm gonna say some of the coolest stuff that I think I've seen that you've sent me over is the live sports, and that's where I'm like, I don't know what it's going to take for the industry to adopt that, but the sports clips you've showed me, especially like going back and watching like archival highlights in an entire new way with the goggles on, it's like, to me, that's some of the coolest VR I've ever seen.
I would love to do like Super Bowl re-releases and stuff like that. I think that for real sports fans, I think that would be incredible. Um, you know, we could go into the real-time space, but I've kind of stayed away from it just because that's a whole world, real-time broadcasting that I don't really know
Mm-hmm.
much about. And I figured I don't have unlimited money to fund these things, so I figured like might as well stick to what I know for now. Um, but I absolutely think we'll start seeing more of the live stuff coming through, maybe with like a 30-second delay or something, or maybe a minute delay if they want to make sure everything's right. But yeah, doing sports stuff. I've, I find first person parkour videos on YouTube, with people like jumping from roof to roof, and I'll convert those and watch it. This is all just for fun for me because I love this stuff. And wow, it is it's an experience, right? It is
I
scary.
bet.
Like you really feel it. Like it's a lot. It really opens up a lot. Uh, I've done, personal home videos from when my kids, were tiny, and it's really touching. It feels like things are more immersive. It feels like you're really there. I'm not sure if you asked a question in there because I forgot, um, but yeah, I mean, it to me, it's opening up a big world, and I think if it comes back, it will be on its merits. In the past, it was really a lot of it was artificially pushed to sell more TVs.
It
Unfortunately,
felt like it was the novelty about it more than that it actually enhanced your experience. It was more of a, it's cool, right? Not a, oh, you'll enjoy this movie more now
Well,
with
and I think
this additional immersion.
it was a novelty in the beginning because it was so new, right? It was novel, right? Um, Now as it's matured a lot, I think we can start looking at it less as a novel offering that is to be bought because of the gimmick, but really because it's more pleasurable if you enjoy that type of stuff, you know. And it would be less, it would be more common, a more common way to view things, a more common way that people share media. And I think again we'll cut down on the gimmicky of it, the novelty, because it will be kind of like a solved problem, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah. Speaking of solving problems, like there's, I think if I can think, there's some obvious when you're depth mapping items, it seems like there's probably a couple things that are obvious that would cause issues, like hair. Hair is just an issue doing any kind of editing or VFX or any kind of work. But what are some maybe not so obvious things that cause issues when you're going through conversion?
Well, a big area of study that I've been heavily involved in for a couple of years is in painting. So I talked earlier about that thing where one camera sees data that the other camera doesn't see.
Mm-hmm.
Filling in that data is is uh is a non-trivial problem, right? So legacy conversion, literally you stretch out the pixels. So in the area where it has stuff it hasn't seen, it's just stretched pixels from the area you did see. And so it
Hmm.
leaves these stretching lines, and then people manually go in, you know, software packages like Nuke. I think mainly exclusively Nuke. And they'll. I was thinking like, does anyone use After Effects for that or Silhouette? I don't think they do. I think it's basically just Nuke,
Just nuke.
maybe Fusion, right? I don't know if, again, I don't want to, people don't understand these programs, but it's a compositing program. It's like Photoshop, but for video. And people will go in and it's called Paintwork. And you're essentially, you know, copying things from the rest of the scene and putting it in that shadow area. I kind of call it a shadow. And then tracking it in, and you know, if someone's face goes behind you into that shadow, you have to take a still frame of their face and match it
Move it
along with
around.
them. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. A lot of it's frame by frame. It's very expensive, right? So I've spent a lot of time and a lot of research working on that problem of in painting, and I'm glad to say I have solved it 100%. I'm gonna hang up now.
100%
I'm
solved
gonna
in
hang up
painting.
now because that's my job is done. No, I've gotten really close, and I mean, functionally we've solved it. Okay, I'll say that. Functionally, we've solved it to the point where we're able to use uh, generative video, AI video models to fill in the area that should be there. But it's not. It's not a trivial problem. It's very complicated. Um, you know, some of the details of issues. If you have a shadow that runs right along someone's silhouette and you want to fill in that shadow, you know, um, AI, you know, it doesn't know that that is where that person ends. So a lot of times with models you can find now and techniques that you can find, it just thinks, oh, the person's wider.
It just extends their
Uh-huh.
shoulder.
Yeah, I've seen it where it adds another face onto the side,
Oh,
right?
geez.
Or like your ear, it like adds another person sharing the ear. Like it doesn't necessarily know. So it's a very complicated problem to be able to fill that those areas in with it. It seems funny, but like being able to fill it in with the correct type of data. And we spent a lot of time working on that. But um, again, a lot of our process is efficient because we can automate things like that. You know, um, we can build. You know, I built out this latest system now. I wish I could show you. It's really cool. Last week, over this whole week, I've been really focusing on I've been working on longer than that, but over the last week, I've been working on the workflow, fine tuning it, and then now we can take it from something that I built by hand, and we can move it to our scalable cloud infrastructure. Big, uh, big buzzwords. And we can press a button, and we can process this in painting at. I mean, it really just depends on how much we want to spend, but we can have it process 500 shots at the same time and do an
Hmm.
entire film in 2 hours. It could do all the painting, right? Of course, you're paying for 500 machines cranking away at the same time, but we also own, a little over $3 million of our own compute. So that kind of like that saves us on some cloud bills. But yeah, those are issues that people don't think about, right? Hair is an obvious one, and we have some tools for helping with that. But I think that the the things that make it difficult for others to get into this industry are, like I said, knowing how to craft a depth grade, knowing how to craft a story in 3D, um, knowing how to fix having how to manage and run artist teams that can fix the things that AI can't, but also developing your own tools to be able to do these things that, like the in painting, you only realize are a problem once you're very far into the process, unless you come from a stereo background. If you're just a tech bro, um, an AI bro, it's like the new crypto bro. And I'm not like talking down on people. I'm just saying that they're dumb. And
You're just saying this isn't something you can vibe code. You're not going to be able to
right,
get away with just
right. Well, it's funny enough. You can vibe code something that now I think that can do some of the stuff that we're doing, right? But of course, to take it to the next mile, you have to have that specialized industry knowledge and blah blah blah.
well. Let's talk about the specialized industry knowledge. So obviously, um, I don't know how else to put it, but besides an idiot savant in a lot of ways,
Oh, dude,
very good.
it's called 2E. You ever heard of 2E?
No,
My son's the same way. I mean, like actually, like diagnosed two. Well, I don't know if you can diagnose 2E, but 2E means twice exceptional, and it means you're doubly better than everyone. No, it means that you're exceptionally good in some ways and exceptionally bad in other ways. And typically, you kind of see that with like a lot of autistic people. Um, my son's autistic. I don't know. I got autism too, I'm sure. Whatever. I hate throwing around labels, but it is something that you see a lot with people like me. And all that is to say is that I'm very good at new technology, about working with computers, about all of this stuff in this particular field, right? This particular lane. I'm really good at that. But pretty much everywhere else, my life just kind of falls apart. I've been lucky enough to be successful at a couple things, like the technology aspect and like managing people, and I really like people. So I've been good enough at those things that I can make money enough to take care of the things I'm woefully, you know, unprepared, or not
inept.
unprepared, inept at, right? Like yeah, like it's not necessarily because I'm dumb or anything, but like I never graduated high school. I could name maybe on an unlabeled map, I could probably name 4 states. Like I'm just being completely honest with you. That I I didn't learn that autumn and fall were the same thing until I was like in my 40s. Like I didn't learn the order of the seasons until I was in my 30s. I don't want to.
That might have been because you live in New Jersey, and I don't know that you guys have a summer or spring. So you might have
No, no,
just
you're
not
talking about
known that there were
California.
4 months.
I grew up in California.
Okay.
That has no seasons, right? Jersey has definite seasons. But yeah, and I'm not saying this to like, I don't want to gloat up how stupid I am, but just to say that, you know, there's a path for people like me out there. I've just leaned into what I'm good at. Uh,
That's what I was gonna say. Is you're very good at finding something you're obsessive about and learning how to become an expert within that. So it's like obviously
I'm
all of
very
this tech
obsessive. Yeah.
stuff, what what you the thing that you bring to all of the tech stuff that you're doing that, like you said, is so hard to replicate for everyone else is the filmmaking approach and the contextual understanding of what is film narrative and story and what makes a movie entertaining. Like what's the whole point of this? And having a film background doing VFX for so long,
Yeah.
and that feels like a differentiating factor that a lot of people aren't going to be able to have, because as we see in AI, there's so many people that can code and build new pipelines, but unless you truly understand the pain points of people within that industry and what their objectives are, then you're never going to be able to fully solve them or address the right pieces of it.
Right. I can come up with all sorts of really cool AI solutions to problems in manufacturing, let's say, right? I'm sure I could come up with some really cool things to automate workflow and all blah blah blah, but I don't know anything about manufacturing. So I don't even know what their pain points are. And let's say I figure that out, right? I figure out what their pain points are. How do I enter the market? I don't fucking know anyone, excuse my language. I don't know anyone in manufacturing, right? I don't
No, you can cuss on this podcast. We're fine with it.
oh, dope.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. Yeah. So, like, I don't know anyone in manufacturing. So, how am I going to bring this to market? How am I going to, a lot of times the solutions that people want to buy are not the ones that you want to sell. So, I don't even know what solutions people want to buy. So, I think that's just in general for business is that being 2E, being obsessive and being smart doesn't mean anything as far as success, monetary success in any given industry. You have to you really have to know the soft, I was going to say soft skills, but soft problems. What are the problems that people want to solve? How can you gain trust? The easiest way to do that is to find someone that has already, maybe someone that has their own plant, and they're known in the industry, and just work directly with them. If you can get their trust, and then you can kind of rent their trust, to other people. So like that's how salespeople work, right? They spend all this time building trust by spouting bullshit to everyone. it, Half true, and then you essentially pay them, and you're paying to rent their trust because now they're talking to clients on your behalf, and the clients already know this person, so they trust them, and then you
It's a really
you pay
interesting
for
way to
that.
put it.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. Like you're renting someone else's trust at a, I don't know, salary wage.
It's hard to get trust, that's why there's all these sales seminars and stuff. It's hard to be able to connect with people, especially if you want to seem genuine but you're pushing an agenda which is not genuine, right? That's
Hmm.
it. I'm just speaking like the hard up truths about what it's like selling, and that's not easy. Some people are just charismatic. They just see things in a different way, and those are skills that I've learned you can teach yourself and get maybe 50% of the way there, which means you're a half-ass salesperson, right? But I think for certain people, they'll never be able to get to be as good as top salespeople or top producers or top whatever, because that's just not their personality. I'm just not like a social person, personality wise. Like I spend all my day working. I'm obsessed with it. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
just not as good at that kind of stuff. But it's very important.
Can you kind of speak to that in a grander sense of the path to where you are now? Because I feel like a lot of people feel like they either have what it takes or they don't to be an entrepreneur or to start their own thing, and they have this false assumption or false narrative that if they start and it doesn't work out, it just wasn't meant to be, and they just should go back and do something else and not continue down this path. But I think you can definitely speak to how untrue that is.
You're talking about all my horrible paths that
Yeah,
that I followed to the edge of the cliff. Yeah, I mean,
a willingness to dust yourself off and say, okay, I learned some shit. Let's keep going.
yeah. So I've been a entrepreneur my whole life. I've only recently like admitted that recently because I feel like it's kind of like a BS word and like gloaty kind of word. There's a lot of assholes on X that are like, how to 10x your business in 20 days, But I grew up in the age of Tony Robbins when he first was
Hmm.
really getting started, big motivational speaker. Back in the world where Like when I was in high school, I remember I like bought a like there was turnkey solutions where you could buy a 1-900 number and connect it to a dating site, to like a phone-based dating service, right? And and you could white label it. So like back in high school, I was like buying 900 numbers and advertising them in the newspaper. You know, that was the big thing back
Were,
then. And
is that pimping? Were you like?
these
I
were
mean,
th- this
that sounds
was
like pimping to me.
it was dating. It wasn't pimping.
Okay.
But of course, with your you know, generous gratuity, who knows what's going to happen? No, it was just lame ass dating, voicemail dating. But back in middle school, I used to go to Chinatown and buy a bunch of these specific candies that everyone is into, and I used to sell them. Um, I used to sell. Was it a high school or was it middle school? It was the end of middle school. I was selling Playboys. My my dad, which he has no boundaries. He was like, "Here's all my old Playboys." He gave me like a stack like that. Literally, it was a stack of old Playboys, and I sold them for like $1 a piece to middle school kids. And man, they were like stealing money from their parents to pay for it. Like I love business. That was a bad example to use, but I love business. Of
Selling porn to kids. I love
I was a
business.
kid. Okay, you can't arrest me for that.
He was a kid. He was a kid for
Yeah, I was
context.
selling drugs, but I was also an addict. Not my fault. Um,
It's not his fault.
yeah, but yeah, out of high school, I ran, like I didn't do well in high school at all. I went for 3 years. My last year, I had a 0.83 GPA, which is very low. I've never met anyone that had that low of a GPA and didn't skip school. But I always had businesses. Back in high school, I had a business called Extreme Technology. It was like X hyphen Treem. It was in the 90s. And we sold motherboards and computer parts online and actually made some pretty good money. Uh, I've had so many businesses throughout the years, maybe 20 or something. Um, but they virtually all fail in the commercial sense. But like you said, it's all about, I guess, dusting yourself off and moving forward. I don't consider it even dusting myself off. It doesn't bother me at all. Failing in these ways doesn't bother me at all because you have to. And if you're really putting yourself out there and you're trying to create a business and you're trying to do something different, you're going to fail. You're probably going to fail at your first 5 businesses. I don't know. There's some really smart people that get it right. I'm not one of those people. But it's really about like just determination, and not letting setbacks bother you at all. Like it's just more knowledge. Whatever you lost in money, you gained in knowledge, and that's something that you could never lose unless you fall down and hit your head really hard. But I
Yeah, I
mean,
think of a
granted,
lot of ways.
besides things like that, like mental, like brain damage, you're essentially going to keep all that stuff forever, and it all builds, and it all built to help, help build Crafty Apes, and then and then I've actually had businesses after that. That backstory: Crafty Apes was the company I was involved in that, we sold for a very large, to me, a very large number back at the end of 2019, and very huge success, right? And we had uh, over 600 employees at some point, and all of that I did before, all that obsessiveness over business and over creating companies led into the success of that, and then after that has led to more success on stuff I'm doing now. But like I said, it's not, like let's say I won big on the crafty thing, and then after that, I had a couple businesses that failed. I started a YouTube kids animation channel that I worked on for like 2 years. I had a small team and everything, and lost hundreds of thousands on that. Um, but I just realized I didn't like, I realized at the end it was all about marketing, and that I didn't really like marketing. I didn't really know how to do it very well, so I moved on from that. But yeah, that's just the way it is. I mean, that's just part of it. You're never gonna like be successful out of the gate. And if you do, that's going to cause more problems than anything because you're not going to know what to do after that. It's like people that win the lottery versus people that earn money slowly over 40 years. People that win the lottery generally just lose it within a year or two. It's the same thing if you had a ton of success early on. It doesn't mean you're actually going to be successful. It actually makes it very difficult to move on from there. So, yeah, I mean, my path has been very much just I've been lucky enough to been able to lean into what I'm good at, which is whatever most interests me. And essentially, I've only done what most interests me because I suck at everything else. I'm horrible at everything else. So I only focus on what really interests me and what gets me going. And I'm just obsessive about it. I mean, I have OCD, but besides that, I'm also just my person. I mean, I'm just obsessive about things. I can work on the exact same thing, and I have been in the case of this conversion. I've been working on it for 2 years, nonstop. Like I said, I'm doing 14 hours a day. I'm not tired. I'm not burnt out. I'm more fueled than ever. It's just how I operate, and I think that's really important. To just this dogged like you know obsession. I'll say obsession more than anything else. It's not a willpower thing. A willpower thing, I think, is something you have to like work on. I don't have to work on how obsessive I am. It's just kind of natural.
Yeah, I think that's something that so many people miss in the equation of starting a business is they get so caught up in the this is a good idea and this will be financially viable, but will this thing fuel you to put in the time it requires to make it to that point? Because so much of early startup and early entrepreneur is you have to be fueled by wanting to put in hundreds of hours every single week to make it work until it does. And if you're not passionate, if it's something that you just see as the shiny egg at the end of it, you will never reach that because you will give up, you will be demotivated along the way. And or you'll be like, all right, cool. Like I worked from 9, it's 5 o'clock. I'll probably quit for the day. Might start a little late tomorrow. But like you're saying, it's like, no, it
Yeah.
really requires what'd you say 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. earlier was your schedule? Like it requires.
Every day. Yesterday, I didn't eat till 7 o'clock. That this isn't a good thing. Like, I'm not saying this is how people. I don't expect that of my employees. I never would. I think that's immoral, right? I'm just doing it
Yeah.
because that's how I operate. But yeah,
You found that's what works well for you is if you can find the thing you can be obsessive about, then nothing will stop you.
yeah. I always tell my kids, I have small kids, they're 11, 9, and 7. And I always just tell them, whatever you do when you grow up and stuff, just focus on what you're most interested in. Um, that honestly, I think, in my opinion, is the best way to be successful as far as money goes. I haven't found a way around having to put in everything you got in the beginning of a company. I mean, once a company grows, after a couple of years, you get enough of a management layer where really you could be an absent owner kind of thing. If you want that, you could work into that, but you can't start that way. Um, I haven't found any shortcuts to it beyond just like complete obsession. And some people continue that, and that's I'm kind of one of those people. Um, but yeah, you have to be very willing to fail, um, and welcome it. When I fail at something, there's a big part of me that's like, cross that off my list, right? I don't.
Hmm.
I know that's not the direction to go anymore. I'm just narrowing what's going to work. I kind of
Yeah.
it doesn't bother me at all, and I think you kind of have that. You kind of have to have that. Um, and like I said, I have this kind of personality. I think a lot of people maybe aren't cut out for that, and that's totally fine. You know, I I I don't think everyone should be an entrepreneur. Just to even widen the discussion, I think it really has to work for you. Um, and it does for me. But like I said, I've been, I've had, when I was younger, I had like my power turned off, my water shut off because I wasn't paying the bills. I've had to sell all my musical equipments to be able to afford to pay rent. Like, this wasn't because of the fact that like I couldn't do it in it, I just would shut out everything to the extent of not dealing with necessities like that, because I was just so focused
Hmm.
on what I was doing, to where I was
Yeah.
just like spend every last dollar I had towards something. Again, I'm not gonna like say that's a great way of doing it, but it's just to emphasize the fact that if you're not all in on something, you're not going to get all. Well, I was going to say something really cool. If you're not all in, you're not going to get all out. But then that didn't make any sense. So I guess you get into something, you get out of something what you put into it. It's just, and when it comes to this type of business, like there's no middle ground in my personal opinion.
Yeah. Can you think back to like a specific hard lesson or maybe like moment of failure that really kind of stuck with you or that taught you something really important to lead you further down the journey?
Yeah.
Like obviously I know not being able to pay rent and things like that. Like I can remember a time where like needing to go to the food pantry because it was just like, well, we just don't have anything and you got to do whatever it takes to make ends meet. But I don't know if I learned any lessons from that, but to work harder. So can
Yeah.
you think of like a specific lesson or maybe one of the startups or things you tried that
I have a,
really taught you more about
I
yourself?
have a story that I don't think I've really told anyone outside of like crafty or anything, at least not that much. But when I think about failure and having solid lessons, is that what is that, wine? Is that
Just a glass of water.
oh, okay.
Straight vodka.
Yeah.
Get my day going.
Um, but yeah, so back when I was at Crafty, I was running the New York office. Um, I had moved out from Atlanta where I was working with Chris at the Atlanta office, and I moved to New York for the sole purpose of starting up a new office and hiring people and building out a team and stuff. And we were a couple years into it, and I was just like way overloaded with work. I just didn't know how to, and I felt like I couldn't ask for help. I think a lot
Mm.
of it just came down to I just didn't know how to. And I remember there was a one of the John Wick films, and I forget which one it is. We had a bid come in to work on one of the John Wick films, and I was supposed to do a script breakdown, which is a horrible job, but it's where you read a script and you break it down to shots, or they hopefully already tell you kind of what shots they're thinking of, and then you assign how much you think the visual effects will cost per shot. For someone like me, I haven't read a book, like since high school, and I think I did like a book report on Garfield Choose the Fat. This is why I had such bad grades. I don't read long. I don't read long stuff. It's very difficult for me. It's very painful for my head. So this is a very hard thing for me to do. But this was a very big client, and the project was over 1 million, maybe 1 or 2 million or something like that. It was a big deal, but I was avoiding it and I wasn't, and I knew I was overloaded, and I wasn't asking for help, and I lost the client. We lost
Mm.
the opportunity to work on that show, and it was kind of like a shoe in because we had worked with them before, and they really liked our work. But I screwed it up horribly. I was like, imagine telling like the John Wick people, like blowing a deadline by a couple weeks, and be like, "Oh, sorry, I'll have it for you by tomorrow," and then tomorrow it turns in the day after. Right? I did that a couple times, and imagine doing that. Like, it's just a horrible thing, and I completely let everyone down. And I remember I was just so bummed. I was so bummed, and in the beginning, I was just like, what's wrong with me? I'm such a fucking idiot. Like, why did I do this? All this kind of stuff. But then thankfully, I came to a place where I realized that like I'm not stupid, but I wasn't being honest with myself with what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. I can, you know, I was honest to other people sometimes, but I wasn't honest with myself. So instead of listening to myself and saying, listen, I should not be doing this. I have a ton of work to do. And this is something specifically that is very difficult for me. It is very hard for me to do timely. um, I need to put my foot down. I need to make sure someone else can do this because I'm not the right person for it. Instead of that, I just told myself how stupid I was for weeks for not getting it done, and how just shame and guilt about how like I'm pushing this off and I really need to do it. And it didn't work in school, and it didn't work for John Wick 3 or whatever it was. Um, and I completely lost the company a ton of money. I let people down, and it was a real bummer for me. And it was after I realized that, and it took maybe a year after that or so, a couple years. It's really been years since then, as I've learned more and more about this, that I have to be completely honest with myself and with other people about my capabilities, and uh, and not to get in the way of stuff getting done because I'm ashamed that I'm bad at it.
Hmm.
That was like, if someone else does it and they are half as good as I could be, they're going to actually do it, and that's better than me trying to and failing for whatever reason. So I learned a lot from that, and I've kind of leaned into that more and more over the years of not like bumming myself out and not shaming and guilting myself for something I'm not good at, but instead trying to deal with myself like I would deal with a friend, which is someone that's much more understanding and accepting.
I think that's like one of the best ways of best piece of advice I ever heard from someone is that your internal dialogue when you talk to yourself, you should talk to yourself like you're your best friend. And it's like you would forgive your best friend for mistakes. You would give your best friend another chance on something. You would give them the benefit of the doubt. You would listen to, you would take in all the other situations of what was happening to them make that mistake. You would do that for your best friend, but like we won't do that for ourselves. Or just like you said, it's like, nah, fuck it. I'm stupid. I'm a failure. I'm lazy. I'm whatever reason this failed. Instead of, okay, well, I'm not good at this thing. I have trouble with that thing. I was too afraid to give up my sense of ownership over it and wanted to, it's me. I can do it. I can do it. And it's like, but you would listen to all of your best friend say that and you'd be like, man, I get it. It's good. Well, don't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ways to look at it. One is like part of me is like, fuck your feelings. Like, I feel like I should be doing this. I feel like I should be able to do this. Fuck that. If your job is to make things happen and you're not making it happen, let go of it. Find someone else to do it. Find another way to get it done. You're not going to get anywhere by yelling yourself at it. And as far as speaking to yourself like you're your best friend, it's very, very difficult. I have a very hard time with that. But something I really try to practice too is um you don't have kids, do you?
No.
Okay, you can't. I don't trust your opinion on any of this then. Um, but you talk to your kids like they're your best friends, and they have you know they they have their own way of looking at the world that's different from yours. What might seem like a personal attack to you, to them, they're fucking little kids. They don't know what they're doing, right? So being able to take a step back and talk to your kids and give them the benefit of the doubt, like your best friend. I think it's a very similar type of thing. Um, and that my another thing I try to work on is that my confidence or my abilities and how I advertise these abilities should not take into account my disabilities. Right. I don't need to include all the things I really suck at to have confidence in the things I'm good at. And that's something big for when it comes to leading teams and when it comes to running businesses and stuff, is that uh just like with trust, a big thing that I'm selling and a big thing that I want to convey is the fact that everyone's covered. I, uh parental figure, Robin, is going to take care of everyone. I'm confident in that. Even if we don't get it right, um, I'm going to lead them to the promised land, right? So you have to convey that, and you have to be able to believe that as well. And part of that is letting go. of some of these things where you're essentially just kind of like guilting yourself for not being someone else.
Yeah, it's a really good way to put it.
Like I can,
When you,
I look in the mirror and I think, why isn't my hair like Matt's? You know what I mean? It's so much better, but it's like it's so thin, And I could guilt myself about that all day. I could get a wig, but people would know it's wrong. I'm just gonna accept it. Wear a hat.
we would know. See, and that's how I feel. I'm like, damn, look at Robin. He can wear a hat. Me, I can't. You should see me in a
No,
hat.
it's
It's a
like
little odd.
like
Yeah, it
flipping on the
just
sides.
I instantly turn into Wayne's World
Okay,
with a hat
I
on.
see
All
that.
credibility I have, everyone's just instantly, oh, he's a dude, bro. I'm like, yeah, I turn into Wayne's World right away. I look like a degenerate. It's good when I want to blend into crowds. So like if I go to the casino, I'll often come in, and be one way, and then go to the bathroom, come out as Wayne's World, and now I'm just a casual party guy here to have fun. I'm not a card
No
counter.
one knows you're
I'm
counting
not,
cards, right? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
just look at a stoner. There's no way I could ever be doing well at the craps table. That guy's just throwing dice. He doesn't know what he's doing.
To be fair,
It's
you could
fun.
be both, but yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. So what is next? What's the next big problem? Do you have like I guess rather a dream project? If you could convert any piece of entertainment media ever, what do you want to do?
I don't know. Whatever's gonna be seen the most. I don't have, I'm a creative person, um, but I'm not here doing things because I want to satiate my creativity. I do things because I want to make a lot of money. Um, in order to fuel my ambitions to do more stuff that I think is interesting. That's honestly like all I care about. Oh, and my family, right? Family first, and then Robin's needs down here. But
Casual family
yeah,
first
yeah,
thrown
yeah.
in at the end.
Family first, always. And but yeah, I mean, I honestly get excited by efficiencies. I get excited by being able to automate something else. I get excited by really just destroying competition, right? In my mind, I don't actually have hatred for anyone else. I love people. I could never look at someone in the face and be like, I want to destroy you. That's not the person I am. But absolutely, what drives me is thinking about other people in my space and how I'm gonna fucking annihilate them, right? How I'm gonna be so much better, so much more efficient. Our product's gonna be higher quality that they won't be able to compete, not because I hurt them, but because they just can't move fast enough to get up to my level. Like that drives me. And so a dream project would be something that I think I could barely manage. It would
Hmm.
be like we have 100 hours of this long form TV series, and we want you to convert it. And we want to you to convert it at a tenth of the price that you're currently doing for film. And even that is a tenth of the price that Legacy does it for film, right? So being able to pull something like that off and make it enjoyable, make money off of it, uh, make viewers happy. I don't want to make a bullshit thing that's just used, to like, so someone could write a press release saying they did it. I want something that actually, it gives people some entertainment. Those kinds of things
Yeah.
really, I mean, mentally turn me on, right? That's what I'm most excited about. Those are my dream projects is stuff like that. Maybe getting into different fields I find really exciting. I just like hard problems to solve. Um, I think it's a blast. I think that's fun. As far as the actual content, it doesn't, it would be fun to work on like a horror movie because I love I don't even love watching horror movies, but I feel like 3D makes them even scarier, you know?
Oh yeah.
So I would love doing that, but um, besides that, I don't really have a content preference. I like the problems. For me, I actually get really depressed once I solve big problems. Um, And that it
You're
sounds,
like, where do I go from here? My life has lost all meaning.
yeah, I mean, it sounds weird, but some of the darkest times of my life, and this is going to sound like a really horrible, like weird brag, but like back in 2005, I got an Emmy for outstanding visual effects for this project I was in. And it was like really early on in my career. And I got to go on stage and I had the fucking trophy and all this stuff. I went into a deep depression after that because I felt like I didn't deserve it. I felt like I've peaked. There's no place for me to go from here. Um, I had a really hard time recovering from that. And again, I don't, it sounds really stupid. It sounds like rich people complaining that their elevator broke down, you know,
Suffering from success.
but it, that's not my idea of success. So that's
Yeah.
why I was so bothered by it. And you know, throughout high school and throughout my younger years, I had this number in mind. I've never been a relaxed person. I'm not a relaxed person. I don't really know how to relax. I don't necessarily find relaxing enjoyable, right? So, but it can cause a lot of anxiety and it can cause a lot of issues in the noggin, right? If you're not thinking about and doing healthy things. And I used to think when I was younger, I remember having very vivid memories of being in fifth grade and just thinking, I will be successful. You know, I will make millions of dollars. And then in high school, it was like, I will have 5 million. Once I get 5 million in cash, I'll be able to relax, right? I'll be able to jump off of this. I'll be able to step away from this feeling that this constant feeling I have of losing time, of losing opportunity, of missing out, of not being good enough. I'll be able to finally let that go. And I'll be able to relax and I'll be able to have that life, that retirement that people talk about. Um, and I kept on doing better. You know, one year, my last year doing visual effects for like not working for myself, I was making like 220 a year or something, which is quite a lot. I mean, this was, I don't know when this was, I don't know, fuck, I don't remember, 2012, something like that, 11. And we were very good, better than my parents ever did. And, but I kept on saying 5 million, right? 5 million in cash. One day I got over 5 million in cash, like in my account, wasn't invested in anything. I had earned that much money. And
You'd hit the milestone.
I fell into another depression. I fell into another depression. I felt alienated from people. I I f- I felt like I didn't deserve it. I've realized over the years that my ideas of what success were, I guess, other people's ideas, you know, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, and a lot of the guilt and shame was coming from not appreciating these successes as much as other people would, and how I didn't deserve them, you know. And I've just learned over the years that I'm not a relaxed guy. This is not something I'm going to earn. I'm not going to make enough money to ever be relaxed, you know. And I've just been um, going down the discovery of who I really am, you know, but being okay with who I am and finding out what does a more relaxed life for me look like. I would say what I'm doing now is a more relaxed life. I've just from working on my own internal beliefs and limiting beliefs, I've been able to live a much better life. The life that I would have thought I would have gotten after making a lot of money. And for me, it's just like being close to everyone. You know, I work from home. My kids are right around the corner at all times. It means I can work all
Yeah.
day and I can still be near people. You know, I only work on things that are really interesting to me. Um, you know, I spend all my money on these businesses. I need to make some of it back eventually, but you know, I found out what is important for me to be happy, and those kind of drive my goals now. And you know, I still get depressed after solving big problems because I get the solving part is the exciting part. And then after I do that,
Yeah.
it's just kind of like a big letdown, you know, because I always tell people working on a movie is like climbing a mountain. You're pushing and you're grabbing and you're clawing. the whole way. And just when you don't think you can go any further, you're got a quarter left of the mountain to go, and you're climbing, your nails are bleeding, you're getting frostbite, and you reach the top of the mountain, and you stand there for a second, then you just fall off, and you fall to your death, two 2,000 feet below you, um, because you climbed for some reason a cliff. That's how I feel when finishing a big project. There's no sense of gratification from it. And so I've learned to prepare for that, to prepare mentally for that, and and be okay with it, and not shame myself into it.
Yeah, it's like about shifting your mindset from one of someone who completes something to someone who arrives at a checkpoint, but the journey is nowhere near completion and you just have to continue forward. There is no goal. You did not accomplish anything. You are merely at the rest area.
The,
Continue.
the goal, not the yeah, the goal. Yeah, there's always a goal, but the actual experience is living in the experience of solving the problem, of being in that stressful situation, of coming up with cool ideas. That's, this it's this stupid cliche about the journey is, the best part is not the end, it's the journey, right? You can kind of look at it like life. What's the goal of life? It's dying, right? We don't know what happens after that, but I'm pretty sure nothing. And that's the goal of dying, right? But what is it about life? It's the living of it, we
It's experience. It's to go through it
that's the
and
fun part.
take everything it has to
That's the
offer.
fun part. I think you asked me like if I want to work on Indiana Jones, and I basically gave you like a synopsis of my 20 years of therapy. But
It's much better that way.
but
It's much better that way.
but I think these things are important, and I think these things have a lot more to do with success and with business acumen and with all of that stuff. Have a lot more to do with it than what software you're using or what LLM you're using or anything else, really.
I I, I very much agree, especially because tools change, but it's really hard to change yourself.
Robin 2.3 beta is around the corner.
Beautiful.
It's showing some really troubling behavior. Yeah, I still need to work on a little bit, but you know,
Get some tweaks in the back end for
I
that for the
wish,
next problem
I
arise.
wish. You know what I'm actually doing? This has nothing to do with visual effects or anything, but if we're talking about therapy and stuff, that the whole idea that you can't change yourself, there are theories and a lot of therapy going around, using things like ketamine to help, bring on brain plasticity and rewiring of neurons and stuff. I think there's limited, I think it's going to have limited access. You don't actually want to reboot your OS. Like, who knows what it would get fucked up. But things like that, I'm actually doing that. I have a bunch of ketamine in my fridge. I mean, it's with a therapist, and it's in like it's.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the research being done. I'm thinking of John Hopkins, similar to the psilocybin research, the
Mhm,
ketamine research for depression and for PTSD therapy, and we're just finding new ways that you can promote neurogenesis in
mhm.
brain and dead brains, and you can also reform neuron pathways that have written a certain way for so long that your body has a natural response of one way. It's fun because it seems like we're re-experimenting with shock therapy, but instead of giving you electrodes, we're giving you drugs so you can have fun.
I love it. I love drugs. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a cliche where you sit down with a therapist and you tell them about your day, and they go, "Well, what was your relationship like with your mom?" Right? And that's a cliche kind of thing. But just from a scientific point of view, the amount of growing and building, brain is like a neural network. The amount of training that goes into this neural network is most radically done when you're like a toddler, up to like
Yeah.
when you're what, like, I don't know, was it 14 or 18 or something? I don't know. I guess men don't stop developing until they're 25 or something, but you know what I mean? The most amount of growth, most amount of training that you're doing on this neural network is done in the beginning, and you have no ability to filter what is in the training data, right? My you know And that comes from your childhood experiences with your family, most notably your mom. For you, Max, I know your issues, but I'm just kidding. I don't remember you at all, like your family at all. But
I was like, what, Dad? What could he have possibly passed on
right,
to me?
but but scientifically, and it's not just, again, fuck your feelings. It's not about feelings. Scientifically, these things get nailed into your brain early on, and of course, genetics play a part in it. And there's only so much you can do to rewrite genetics. My dad was very much obsessive the same way I do. You know, my whole family are also addicts, which goes along with that. I'm not an addict. I think I am, but just for work. But you know, that kind of stuff runs in the family, and there's limited amounts you can change that. But things like ketamine, you know, or just talk therapy, they can slowly rewrite parts of your brain, and I fully on board with that. I'm fully on board with checking that stuff out. You know, I've been in talk therapy for, you know, I don't know, 20 something years. And there are limited amounts of things you can do just by willpower and talking to someone. um, you know, you start running into the edges of what you're able to do. So I'm hoping I'm hoping this would be kind of a cool way to experiment and maybe give myself some like kind of superpowers, or you know, maybe I get taller or something. But I'm all for that kind of stuff. I think yeah, I think it's super important. Chris and I don't know, Chris hasn't been on the podcast, but we talk a lot about the emotional and the emotional aspects of business, and how emotions play into everything. And I think it can't be understated how important it is to have a high EQ if you want to have a lot of money. And for some people, that means that they've found that managing through fear is a exceptional way of motivating people. Other people have different methods, but even managing through fear, even being an asshole, it's an emotional play, and there's a reason why that works on people. I don't like doing that because I don't think it works long term, but there's real reasons why that stuff kind of works, and a lot of it is emotional. And the more you know about that, the more you know about yourself, you know, the more ketamine you get, I think.
It's funny you bring that up because earlier you mentioned that a lot of companies will rent someone else's trust in the position of a salesman. And I find that it's probably true with EQ as well, where there's a lot of companies that, you rent someone else's EQ, whether that's in your thought leader at the company, or well, this is the actual position, I guess, HR department in a lot of ways. But even when you talk about like a team leader or person in the position who's going to facilitate the group of employees accomplishing a task together, especially when it's an incredibly sluggish task, it's like you're essentially renting their EQ because you're like, shit, I need them to be a good leader. I need them to step up to that. And so that in itself becomes a valuable skill.
You want to hear something interesting? So narcissists, right? Narcissists do well in business. And I think everyone can maybe point to a boss in their past that they didn't know what the fuck they were doing. They had zero ideas, but they're very confident about it. And they basically made you run around and chase your tail, and they got nothing done, and everyone hated them. And everyone was like, how did they get to this position, right? So specifically when
Yeah.
talking about like narcissists and stuff like that, you have to realize, I mean, you don't have to realize it. I would say, like, please realize that that narcissists exist through the lens of other people, right? That's like the main issue with narcissists, is that they don't have an ego to hold up on their own. They don't have they everything about how they view themselves comes from how other people view them. Um,
Yeah.
that's part of the, oh god, I don't know the term for it, but that's part of the personality defect, is the fact that you're unable to create and live off of your own ego, and you have to build one, and you see yourself in whatever form. You see it through the eyes of other people, and so they're innately very good at reading emotions and manipulating emotions. It's not like they've studied it. It's because their existence depends on it, you know. um, it's kind of like I'm going in the weeds here, but like schizophrenic people, um, the symptoms that you see from schizophrenic people, the anger, the paranoia that someone's out to get them and stuff, they're that's a strategy to be able to exist in the world that they're in. inherently they're in a world. I don't know why I'm going off on this, but inherently they're in a world that's different from ours. Would they, they're all of our reality is shaped through our own lenses, both physically of our eyes, but also mentally. That was a dumb sentence, but everything we see is focused through that, right? But schizophrenic, their lens is pretty deep and it's pretty distorted, um, and it gets that way through no fault of their own. And so it is a survival technique to learn how to cope of being in this world that other people aren't, right? So it's not that they're crazy, it's that they're doing the best that they can with the world that they have. So imagine that your world is only seen through the eyes of other people. You're going to spend an inordinate amount of time studying people and finding out how to get good reactions from them. And that's why narcissists do really well. It's, and I think this proves the point that I try to get across to a lot of people is that your specific skill or your specific product even has less to do with the success of yourself or your business. And it has more to do with how
Hmm.
people perceive it. Um, that's why a lot of people have had these asshole managers that don't know what the fuck they're doing. Is because they're really good at one thing. It's just not the thing you need them to be good at, but it's a thing that gets them in that position. And at the end of the day, that's the problem they were trying to solve. They weren't trying to solve your problem. They were trying to solve their own problems. So, you know, I don't mean to say that you can just be a fucking dipshit and not actually work on anything you do. But imagine if you had those capabilities and those understandings, and you were also a somewhat proficient person that is good to the people around them, and treats people fairly, right? That's going to be such an advantage over most people. And that's why I
Yeah.
really talk about that kind of stuff. And just to accept the fact that narcissists do really well and learn from it and understand, and not to just get angry at them. That doesn't do anything. They're still existing, and they're gonna make more money than you. Like, for the most part, that's true. Sometimes they become the president. I'm being completely serious. That's how that stuff gets to that point.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, like you said, people become very jaded by it. And like you can either become jaded and pissed that you look at people that maybe don't have all the best traits and they beat you out in some things, or you can go, all right, well, what are the traits that they're using that I can learn from to hopefully level up? Do I need to be a little more aggressive or a little more who gives a fuck how other people feel? Like you said, fuck your feelings.
Yeah,
I need to do this
you don't
thing.
need to point it back to me. You can swear on your own. But yeah, like, that old man shaking his fist at the sky, right? That's how people look at while they're not where they should be, because they're just saying like, why does this asshole get it and I don't? There's something wrong with the world. It's like you have to let that go. To quote you, fuck your feelings. There's a reason why this person is there. Find out why, and then do that. But do it in your own way, right? Like, I'm not gonna follow someone that's a total asshole, but I'm gonna study why that works. And I'm going to study, and I'm going to really face the hard truths, which is I am not a social person. I don't socialize. I've never gone to go see a movie with a friend. Like, I just don't, that is not pleasurable to me. I'll go with my wife, hold hands and stuff, maybe snuggle, but there's nothing enjoyable for me to just hang out with a buddy and have dinner and not talk about work. That I'm like the autistic kid that talks about trains all the time. That's the only thing that's enjoyable to me. So, but I've known that for a very long time, and I've focused a lot for the past 15 or so years to really work on my abilities to speak to people, my ability to manage people, my ability to talk to directors and blah, 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 and be confident.
Mm.
Like, I specifically worked on that for decades, and it's helped a lot. But I realize there's a limit to that. And so I don't beat myself up over it. I find qualified salespeople that can go the extra distance. I don't post on Facebook. I don't do any of that kind of stuff, but I'll hire a company that can guide me and do posts for me, because that stuff is important. Being a thought leader means you have to put yourself out there, right? You can't be me in your basement. I'm on the third floor, by the way. It's better than being in your basement. Um, and doing and doing this all day. You have to realize
Yeah, like you are a thought leader. If thought leader means you have a lot of really good
you have
thoughts,
to
but the
they have
problem
to have
is no
public
one knows
thoughts.
what the hell you're
Yeah,
thinking.
there have to be public thoughts. You have to care about what you look like. Um, I didn't for this podcast, right? But you said it was super chill. But yeah, you have to guide what you're presenting to people. You know, it's not easy. For some people, it's really easy. For some people, it's not easy. But just get over yourself and just, fake it till you make it. Um, or maybe you'll never make it and you'll always have to rely on other people, but that's fine. Recognize it and deal with the problem, and don't just think, oh, I just need to work harder. Because for some things that's true, for most things that's not. It's just not the way things go. People don't change.
So you preach extreme authentic self-ownership.
I'm here to solve problems. The biggest problem is that I don't have enough money, right? So how do I solve that problem? You break it down.
You get more
I'm not
money.
going to solve that problem by by being pissed at a competitor that is more charismatic. I'm just not. I'm either going to hire people to help me be charismatic, or I'm going to figure out a way to partner up with them. Like, I don't know if you haven't talked to Chris yet on the podcast or anything, have you? But when you do,
No.
Chris is naturally good at this stuff. Chris Ledoux, everyone,
Mm-hmm.
not the country singer. He's naturally good at sales, but he's not a salesman, right? He's naturally charismatic. He's naturally really interesting. People naturally remember him. I'm not that person, so I didn't have that role, and I didn't beat myself up about it. I relied on Chris for that because he was so good at that. And when it comes to solving problems, real world problems, yeah, you just got to break it down and be very honest with all of them, and then figure out a way to solve them, and not let yourself get in the way. If you're as single minded as I am,
Hmm.
so for me, everything boils down to work, what I'm working on, what problems I have to solve, and how I can solve them, and nothing kind of gets in the way for me. I mean, a lot of things get in the way, but
Except family. Family comes first.
who? Oh, my
Family.
family?
Yeah, of course.
My kids, man. I live for
Yes.
my kids. No, I do. I do love my family, but if I've talked about this with Kim, my wife, and we've both said if we were just full-time parents, we'd probably be fucking abusive. Like, I'd be a horrible dad. Would I be abusive? No, I wouldn't hit them, but I'd probably yell too much. In fact, I know I would yell too
I
much.
feel like you would probably yell at me a lot more
I
if you were a full time kid. I think you would just yell at a lot of other people more.
I found myself yelling at my kids more because I was trying to be something I wasn't, not to say I tried to spend time with them, but I just mean like it was in a different way. But, you have to be honest with yourself. And for me, I can't be a full-time parent. I can be a parent um, as much as I can, and that's a good amount. It's a healthy amount, but I'm not a super dad. I'm not good at that. My brain doesn't work that way. And so that's why I've moved everything closer to my family, because otherwise I wouldn't be around at all. Like, I really wouldn't. You just have to
Yeah, and like
recognize
you
these
said,
things.
now you have the freedom of like, I'm sure they'll be home from school soon or something's going on soon. It's about that time of day. It's like you get to see them then. You get to have dinner with them. You get to still be a part of the life while getting to be obsessive and put in 14, 16, 18 hours a
Yeah, I
day
mean,
with what you really want.
getting to be who I am, it used to be a big fear of mine, but it probably is still my biggest fear, is that I'll have a very normal life, right? That for
Yeah.
me, even back in middle school, I was, if I, that cliche of like waking up in your 30s and you have a mortgage and you have a family and you're like, this isn't the life I wanted. That drove me, and it still drives me. That is a huge fear of mine. And that's what I focus on, because that's what's most important to me. And I just have to be honest about that. I would rather win big and then lose it all than to ever with this is like that love and loss thing, than to ever have won a big. Like, I like that roller coaster. I think it's interesting. Um, it's exciting to me. And I've also, and I don't focus on the money part with my kids. I don't focus on the money part. I tell them all the time, like, this is ephemeral. This comes and it goes, and it has nothing to do with our connection to the family or what your life is. It's just something that comes and goes. I'm always preparing them that we're going to sell this house and move into an apartment, which is very
Like at some point, you will lose
the
everything. Just be
the
aware.
way
It could
the
happen.
way I go all in. We're not that far away from it.
You're like, look, we're getting a new house one way or the other. It's either a mega mansion or it's a 2-bedroom apartment down the street. New house is
Things are
coming.
changing. Hang on,
No, I think it's important though to embrace change because I definitely in my own personal life have met too many people who aren't adapted for change, and they hit 20, they hit 30 and something happens and they've never had to before, and it just so I think there's like a unique resilience that comes from being a serial entrepreneur, which is at any moment everything you're doing could completely change what you're spending your 14 hours a day on, this living situation, the financial situation, and just saying no matter what, I'm going to go through it and I will figure it out one way or the other and come out on the tail end of it.
Yeah, I think it's part of like the ADD brain or whatever you want to call that kind of constant need for stimulation, you know? Um, I find it interesting if I have to go to the hospital, right? I had to get I was ha I have some genetic like blood issues. I have no blood. I don't have blood. You cut me and it's just like water comes out.
They're like, we've never seen this before.
No, I have blood. I have blood, but it's bad blood. It's like it doesn't have enough specific type of white blood cells. And I remember having to go to the hospital a bunch and get like a bone marrow biopsy and all this kind of stuff. But I found the whole
Mm.
thing interesting. Like I'm more excited by change and big things happening. That has more to do with how happy I am than the actual thing happening, which sounds weird, but I think the nature is that I like the idea, and I only exist in a flexible world. That's where I live best. And it turns out that business, I think, and something we learned at Crafty Apes is that business is won or lost in the chaos. People that think they
Mm.
can go out there and create a business and create a book on how to manage it and set up their pipeline perfectly, and that they'll be successful and they won't have to live in chaos. I think they're diluting themselves, and I think they're going to be I think they're going to really limit their success because the reality is that things are won and lost in that chaos. That's kind of, you're stepping out into the void where other people aren't willing to, and that's where you get the real big wins. IMHO.
I think it's a good insight, and then you ruined it.
I know I like to pepper in a bit of nonsense.
I thought it was some kind of, it took me, that's how bad, took me a moment to think of the acronym, and then realized that you were saying, for those of you at home who are older, in my honest opinion, um, LOL.
I'm 46. That's not old. It's older than you. But yeah, so yeah, living in chaos. Again, I think a lot of entrepreneur type people are best suited for that, because that's where our minds like play, right? That's interesting. So I think it's just something you have to embrace. I mean, you don't have to, you should, but if you want to be successful and stuff, in business, you should. But there's no exact thing you have to do, but I think a lot of people would gain a lot by learning to stretch their comfortability zone and learning to be excited about being uncomfortable. And it's a learned thing. It's not, you have to really push yourself.
Yeah, to like I know one of the things I always tell my friends is that like I feel like I do my best work when I'm drowning. Like throw me in the deep end and let me struggle, because if I can stand, I'm just gonna stand. I'm never gonna try to do anything more than just cool. But if I'm drowning, I will I will figure it out and make sure my head does not go underwater.
I operate the best underwater as well.
Yeah.
I'm literally underwater.
You're like, no, drown me.
Yeah, it's kind of my thing. Choke me, push me underwater. I'm sorry, it's not that kind of podcast.
Well, Robin, this has been a pleasure. It's great to talk with you as always. Any closing words you want to leave with the audience? Words of advice and encouragement, maybe, on being an entrepreneur, or words on why they should start consuming more 3D content?
I don't have any cool words. I don't have any
Hell
cool words.
yeah.
I just like the discussion. I like the discussion. I think so much can be learned from that. And I think I've probably made like a dozen statements to this talk that actually contradict. And I'm pretty sure if I made one now, it would also contradict itself. So I say just be inquisitive, look into why things are happening and try to deconstruct them. And I love talking about this stuff. So if anyone wants to talk to me more about it, or if they want to hire me, feel free to, because this is what I find really exciting. I've had a great time talking with you. You're really excellent at asking questions.
Thank you.
Um, that sounds demeaning. It is not. You're really good
I'm not good at answering questions, but by God, can I ask
you're
them?
very smart. Very smart. I had a great time talking with you. So it was actually a lot of fun. I was kind of worried that it wouldn't be that interesting or I'd want to run out of stuff to talk about, but it turns out I can talk a lot.
Yeah, I've realized that you gave me a certain amount of time that you were free, and we have extended past that at this point. So I want to make sure that I don't take up your whole
It's
day.
420.
Yes, it's time. I'm trying to let you off so you can get done what needs to be
Put your hair
done.
down.
Exactly. Robin, pleasure as always. Talk to you soon.